Okay, wonderful. My name's Krystin Railing, and I live in Portland, Oregon. My business is called The Performer's Guide.
So when would you say you first either started changing protocols or had cancellations, or when did the industry really first feel the effects of COVID?
So I would say that the first wave of notice came when events over 250 started canceling, and that was the first shockwave for our industry, I'd say, and the first time I personally caught wind of it as well.
How far out were those cancellations happening? Like how far out were gigs booked that became canceled?
Well, initially it was just a few weeks out and then a few months out, and now it's all the way through August.
Wow.
Up until August that I'm hearing of cancellations, and events such as Burning Man, which happened in the end of August, are still hesitating and on pause, but still pushing forward in hopes that there is a resolution potentially in August. But the ordinance is only issued until the end of April.
Okay.
No, the end of, let's see, March, April. I believe it's the end of May. And so technically the beginning of June festivals are still on the fence even then.
Yeah.
But at this point are definitely pulling the plug, even if ordinances go back in what by, I guess the new estimation from Trump is by Easter, but I just don't think that's a realistic expectation.
Yeah.
No, you know,
that's definitely most likely a little too soon unless we really see some type of big turnaround here the first 2 weeks of April in terms of cases dropping off. But how do you think this will affect the kind of future of the industry? Do you think once the quarantine is lifted, whether that's 2 weeks from now or two or 3 months from now, do you think the industry will pick back up rather quickly, or do you think there's going to kind of be some slow hesitation of people maybe not entirely wanting to go outside or go into these big gatherings, or how do you think this changes the outlook for the rest of the year?
Well, I definitely think for up until August, I'm definitely seeing a halt and rescheduling to early next year or end of the year. But as of now, from August on, I'm still getting inquiries. I'm still hearing of events staying active. But I think that everyone's more hopeful than like really trying to push an event, which I think that there's some backlash on people who are still trying to maintain status quo with an event that they're trying to throw. And, as an event producer and performer and patron and someone who buys a ticket, I understand from all perspectives of the need to push forward on an event that you've already put a lot of deposit down on, or, just you've already lost so much income from the beginning of the year that you're hoping to regain losses. Otherwise, a lot of businesses may fear they may go under if they can't, continue with their current event, especially people who run multiple events throughout the year. Like, for instance, you live in San Diego. I'm from San Diego. The Hillcrest Business Association was one of my clients and good friends, Ben Nichols. Even they're talking about the fact that Comic-Con, if that doesn't happen, if Pride Parade doesn't happen, like those businesses in downtown and Hillcrest who rely on those influxes of business during those months, who are already seeing a decline in their business because of, isolation, that right now we're seeing a wave of performers losing their businesses and their livelihoods, but we're about to see another wave of small business owners who own or who are renting in a building start to lose their income, and then it's a domino effect that we feel first as a luxury item.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a potential scary world that we could be opening back up to with a lot of small businesses that could be impacted and not be able to reopen. It's definitely been a concern of mine. It's one of the reasons I started the podcast that I'm doing here, because I wanted to hear from everybody and see how far reaching this was going to be, and then in turn see, hopefully, that some of the federal stimulus money can get to the right people in the right places, and maybe help see how effective it's going to be. I mean, so kind of shifting to that topic, do you know much about the bill that passed and was signed into law yesterday afternoon? Do you know whether you think that will help performers, entertainers, small businesses? Will it help them enough? Is it just a good first step? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I've been trying to keep as much up to date as I can. The bills kept changing there during the negotiation phase, and so it was hard to keep up for a minute. I did just receive a really good explanation of specifically how independent contractors can apply for unemployment insurance benefits under the current regulations, and so I'll share that with you, and we can put that in the comments below as well.
Definitely, yeah.
And essentially, from what I'm gathering, is there's two different types of unemployment insurance that's happening. There's unemployment insurance, that's regular unemployment insurance that used to only be covering W-2 performers, workers, full-time employee, that your employer was paying into this service, and then you would get a fraction of your pay. But now that service has expanded to include independent contractors based on your income. And so the details of that will be specified below. And then there's also the stimulus package, right? And so that's a one-time payment that everybody across the board who's been paying taxes should also receive. And so with the combination of the two, you're going to get, if you've been paying your taxes and you're eligible, the one-time payment of up to $1,200. And then if you apply for unemployment insurance, you can receive benefits even if you're an independent contractor. And then if you had a combination of W-2 and 1099, then you could put that together. Yeah. And then the only, specification that's really under question is specifically for people in California. So if you're in California and you're affected by AB5, there's some, questions as to what filing for unemployment opens up for the domino effect of the books of what they're looking at. And apparently AB5 went into effect in 2017, but wasn't really widely known until 2019. And so there's a 2-year gap where, if they start looking through, and it's a hefty fine per event, it's like, $5,000 plus, and there's someone who's already, very vocal about their fines that they got, and it ended up, tens of thousands of dollars in fines. It's insane. So if you live in California, you want to be a little bit cautious and just make sure that you speak with tax professional before applying for these things.
Yeah, definitely. AB5 has. I could do a whole separate podcast on AB5. And
we can
the effects. Yeah, no, it's actually it's something that I've had in my mind. It's sort of been both pushed to the back burner because of COVID, but at the same time, it's always bringing up new questions because there are medical workers who are independent contractors, and supposedly it's prevented some hospitals or nursing homes from being able to hire extra staff on independent contractor because of the AB5 law. It's definitely something that needs to be examined more in California, and the entertainment industry is widely affected from it. what do you think that you were, and obviously no one really can be prepared for anything like this, but do you think that you had some level of preparedness for anything like this? And if not, will you change potentially anything in the future once everything goes back to some semblance of normalcy? Will you maybe change how you potentially prepare for something like this?
This is a great question. So I was lucky enough to have already in January had the mindset that I was taking a year off of performing and I was taking a year off of festivals. And I started a business coaching program for other performers. It's called The Performer's Guide. And I started that program last July. And so I've already been implementing strategies to move my business online.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm 100% digitally employed, self-employed, and not relying on performance income to pay my rent. So I feel very grateful that I already knew that this type of education and learning that this platform was sort of the next step. Yeah. But I didn't realize that there was going to be something so quick that everyone jumped over. But I had already taken online creation courses and social media marketing. I do website development, and I have a lot of digital skills. I grew up with a computer growing up. My dad, kind of mashed computers together, and I played Mavis Beacon for fun. And so I grew up with computers, and that's why I started the Performer's Guide, because I felt like most people in the performance industry, they're trading their time for money, and they're trading it at an equal or lesser value for what it's actually worth, because they're putting in so much extra work that's not getting recognized. Yeah. And so my program is to help people learn how to sort of layer the way that their streams of income come in, so that you have live and digital, and you have passive and, active income coming in, that if one gets pulled out, that it doesn't feel like the rug gets completely pulled out from under you. And so I think that one of the biggest things that could help people is just having, at least 3 sources of income, right? So, maybe one of them live or digital, you can decide, but so that if one just gets completely wiped out, you have these other 2 things sort of, even if they're on the back burner, and having both digital and live options.
Yeah, no, that was a point in one of my earlier interviews today of just trying to diversify your income stream. They talk about diversifying investments. So if one investment tanks, your whole portfolio isn't crashed. But so the idea is definitely try to have a couple different income streams that aren't all dependent upon each other or something like that. Do you have any ideas, or maybe you can bring awareness to some things that are already happening about what community efforts can kind of be done to help artists, or like I said, maybe some programs or things that are already out there that people are trying to do, since obviously artists are one of the main affected. I mean, it's affecting everybody, but our artists are definitely seeing that it hit a little hard.
Definitely, yeah. So I have also another list of artist funds per city, like by city, that have been created by individual organizations to help artists. I don't know if those funds have closed, if the applications have closed yet for them or not, but there is a wide variety. There's so many different types of ways to get funding, and there's government grants, which we talked about a minute ago, and then there's the public funding through crowdsourcing. That's the other list I just mentioned. But then there's the self-empowered way, right, which would be to apply for other private grants available, or private donors. So like just an individual person, finding somebody close within your social network who you think might donate to your cause, and then creating a well written out proposal of how you would use that money, and then just sending that to a couple people that are really close in your circle, as opposed to casting a wide net, which I think a lot of people try to do with marketing in general. They try to cast like this, the government grants, right? The public funding, the things like, but there's so many other people competing for that versus me just messaging you, a good friend I've had for 15 years, being like, hey, I know you have a business that's still intact and you're good right now. Here's what I need. And remember that personal relationship we've had over the years, you want to tap into those relationships right now also, you know?
Definitely. I've seen all types of artists even sometimes just, performing with their Venmo handle behind them, it's just sort of like, hey, I'll take tips. I'm performing some music, or I'm performing some stand-up comedy. Sort of shifting gears a little bit. How have you thought about the response from the federal government, as well as how the state has handled the crisis? Is there a little more that we should have been doing, potentially ahead of time? Too little, too late? Just what are kind of your thoughts on the federal versus your state of Oregon's response?
So, first of all, I think everybody's trying to do their best. This is our first worldwide pandemic of this magnitude that we've taken these measures to control. So everybody's sort of flying by the seat of their pants, and also looking towards, the Spanish flu pandemic, which is 100 years ago, where a lot of those things aren't relevant to this time frame. Yeah. And so, as far as people's responses, they're really trying their best. And I think that especially when you have two dueling sides that are trying to come to an answer, there's always going to be a back and forth, and then it gets sort of hyped in the media. It's like, they're, denying this and that. But it's really just everyone trying to come to an agreement that works, and then they try it out, and then maybe it doesn't. I also think, and I've been reading that even though the $1,200 was only approved for just one, that there's a potential that could continue. So, you have to trust as much as you can that everyone's trying their best in this time when it's so globally impactful.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's unprecedented, and it came. It didn't come out of nowhere, but it came on, I think, much quicker than anybody really expected. Whether it be government officials or just the general public. The beginning of March was pretty much normal, and by the middle of March, it was a whole different world. So, thank you so much for your time and sharing your stories. I really appreciate it. It's been great to hear from people all over the country. And kind of be connected, and we're all in the same boat. We're definitely all kind of dealing with ways to get through this together. Do you have any other kind of final thoughts you want to leave, maybe with other artists listening, or people who support the arts, or just the audience at large?
Yes. So I guess I would say prepare for two different scenarios, right? There's definitely a short term where you have to move digital and figure out a way to make that work, which can continue long term either way, but you have to also prepare for the real potential, as I'm reading, that this could go on in waves for up to 18 months. Yeah. And so what does that timeline look for you versus also the potential of it ending in August? So there's two different potentials, and we're kind of holding our breath, but in this time, figure out both potentials of how you want to proceed in this next decade, right? It's a really good pause to think, is this the way that I still need to be presenting myself? Do I need to be the exact same that I was in person digitally? And not only do I need that, but is that what people need from me? Yeah. And so instead of just trying to transition yourself digitally, like exactly the same as you were, figure out what the market needs in this moment from you right now, just in the same way that I used to be a circus performer and a manager of circus performers, but when I moved digital, I knew that that's not what people needed from me. They needed business advice. Yeah. So find out what people are already asking you about, already needing from you, and ask people what they need, and then monetize that in a way that feels like a good energetic exchange for both you and them. And then that's how you just transition over.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Definitely figure out what your brand is, figure out what your messaging is, figure out how you want to reach your audience in a way that's authentic to you, or your product or your story, or whatever it is.
Yes.
Definitely. So thank you so much again, Krystin. I really appreciate it. I plan to follow up with everybody, whether this does go on 2 weeks, 2 months, or all the way into August. I want to be hearing whether the stimulus money reaches the right people, the people who need it, how it helps hopefully save businesses. And then hopefully I want to hear the stories of, once the quarantine's been lifted, of everybody going back out to live events and flooding performers with work, and the economy is hopefully will be doing well, and the stimulus will have worked. And so yeah, I'll be sending out emails as we release and everything. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Take care.